live. Let's see if I can get, of course I lost natural light right before I started. Let's see if we can get this light dialed in. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, and I am an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. I am going to try a couple things at the start of this video. So give me just a second because I want to make sure that it shows up on online. I've got my phone running, but I want to make sure that it actually shows up to my page. There we go. And I am going to share this really quick to my personal page because I have a lot of friends and entrepreneurs who are in business who could benefit from the topic that we're going to discuss today because it's a big one. And I think, let's see, gosh, this is showing up really bright. There we go. I think that it'll be helpful so I get contacted by a lot of people asking basic questions about copyrights, online protection, and themes. I've noticed that in my business, like themes happen almost on a weekly basis, even issues that come up with my own clients. Issues that come up in my own business. And so today I thought it would be great to talk about protecting our online content. I'm going to go over some recent sample scenarios from the lives of some of my clients, which will be informative, anonymously, of course, as well as my own. And then we're going to talk about how do we, as online entrepreneurs, protect our content, protect our online businesses in a way that keeps our digital products, programs, our website safe. Can't tell you how many times I get contacted by people in a panic because somebody has totally duplicated a course or duplicated their entire website, including pictures of them somewhere else and claiming all of the content as their own, essentially really attempting to duplicate somebody's branding, everything. So it's amazing really what happens, and that's why I used kind of the provocative title, Online Thieves Are Everywhere. They really are. You'd be surprised at how little, oh my gosh, little ethics people have and how frequently they will willingly take the online content of somebody else. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to go over scenarios, what to do if that does happen. All right, let me share really quick. Take a moment to share to my personal page. Give me 1 second while I do this on my computer. Here we go. For my entrepreneur and business friends, come learn about copyrights. Okay, copyrights, and we're gonna go through some strategies that will go beyond just copyrights because there are some overlapping strategies for protecting your online content. I want to make sure that people have a full understanding as much as possible as we can cover in a few minutes via a general Facebook Live. Of course, I have to say the caveat is that this is not legal advice. Yes, I'm an attorney and legal coach. This is general legal information. So yeah, I always have to start with that. Let's see, come learn about copyrights and protecting your online business. Okay. So I don't know if we have anybody joining yet. I have not. I'm totally new to Facebook Live. I think I've done it once before. I used to do the little mini pre-recorded videos. Those to me were easier, easier and less stressful. I could just record them wherever I had 2 quiet minutes. So let's try this. I'm just going to reshare. But there'll be hopefully some people that see this on replay. So if you do, oh, excellent. Katrina, I see you online. Thank you for joining. If you have any specific questions, I'm going to try to monitor those on my computer, which is why I pulled this up so that I can see questions there because I don't always see stuff on my phone. But again, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior, attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. We're talking today about online content, how we keep our online content, digital programs, courses, etc. safe. And so if you are an online entrepreneur, this is a huge component of running a successful online business. And I was starting to say earlier, themes show up in my legal practice, in doing work with clients, pretty much on a weekly basis. And the theme recently has really been about, see, here comes our light again, about online legal protections and how to keep our businesses safe. Just to give you one example, so I have one client who developed an online presence, produced a bunch of information through his website, and we probably have a list right now of 50 to 60 people that we have to pursue for various intellectual property violations, right? So 50 to 60 people online that have either duplicated his content, taken the system that he teaches and are, repurposing that in their own business, essentially borrowing his stuff, right? I say borrowing nicely, it's stealing. But that's why I titled this video, Online Thieves Are Everywhere. Okay, and I see that we have a few more eyes, so welcome everybody. I don't know who else is here. I'm hoping to get better at this live video thing where I can actually tell who is on. But if you're just joining, we're talking about protecting online business today and how we keep our content safe. So I was just starting to say that I have one client and we currently have a list. Hi, Jessica. Currently have a list of probably 50 to 60 people that we need to pursue for borrowing his content. Even in my own business in the last month, I've probably had to pursue 20 different people for taking my content, duplicating portions of my website. It's really amazing what people are willing to do. And so when I say online thieves are everywhere, they literally, a lot of people just don't have ethics when it comes to taking other people's online content. Or they don't think about it. But I mean, to me, it gets down to an issue of personal ethics. I've had to pursue people in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in Scandinavia, in Norway, all over the United States, right, for duplicating my content and duplicating the content of my clients. So I also do enforcement work for some of my clients. And it's, it's really interesting to see what people are willing to do in the online space. So just setting the stage that if you are running an online business, if you're publishing content online, even if you're a blogger, so I have worked with people who run successful blogs and, publish quite a bit of content, even if they haven't yet turned it into, for example, a going, business concept or commercial endeavor yet. They're a real content creator. Those can be targets. So anytime you have an audience and you're doing something that people are following online, you are prone. You're very susceptible to being targeted by somebody who thinks it's easier. And I'm going to fix this phone so it doesn't slip out of this thing holding it. They think it's easier to just rip off your content than create their own. So partly I wanted to talk about some of the scenarios I've seen just to lay the foundation that people should not be naive if you're doing really anything online and creating content that you're publishing, that you're sharing in various avenues, whether it lives on a website, whether you're sending it out in email correspondence, whether you are creating it even inside of a database or membership site. So I've worked with lots of clients who got in touch once they had a course or something that was protected online, ripped off and totally duplicated somewhere else. And I mean, I've worked with some people who've even had like their images, their faces put on somebody else's website along with all of their content. So it's really unfortunate that that is the reality of the online world, but you just need to be aware of that going in so that you can strategically decide what solutions fit for your business. So I may have left this out at the beginning, but my goal through my legal coaching business, the Legal Website Warrior, which is in addition to my traditional legal practice, is that legal information for online entrepreneurs, for small businesses, my goal is that it's easier to access, easier to implement than is generally available in the traditional legal model, right? So that's partly why, one, I wanted to establish office hours and, tackle this whole Facebook Live thing so that I can just have conversations with people, do essentially mini trainings on each of these topics, make it easier for people to understand what protections are available to them. So with that said, let's jump into some of the strategies that you might use to protect your online content. I get a lot of questions around copyrights, trademarks, online protection, and I want people to understand what's available for your content, for your business. So let's go over, and I'm just going to pull up, for people who listen all the way to the end, and I don't know how long that'll be, we'll spend a few minutes talking, but I have got a free report that I'll give away through a link that will give you access to some intellectual property basics and will really help you to understand a bit more about what intellectual property is, how it applies to you, how you go about protecting it. So let's start off talking about, first of all, what is IP, right? So intellectual property is basically, and there's various ways that it can be created, right? And in the digital world, because when we talk about online business, it often includes actual copy, right? So things that you write, things that you publish online, it can be things that you really publish in any digital format. Visuals, right? So intellectual property includes something visually that you put together, whether it's a piece of artwork or something else that you create online. It is, and I'll just read the formal definition because it's a big bucket, but it covers a tremendous amount of actually what entrepreneurs and small businesses create. And so it's ironic that a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs actually don't think that they have any IP. They don't consider the fact that they are actually very intellectual property rich. And that tends to be one of the largest assets that we have in our businesses is the information that we create, the systems or products, the courses, programs, stuff that we build inside our business, that's all intellectual property. So the formal definition is here. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs and symbols, names and images used in commerce, right? So that's from the World Intellectual Property Organization. Let's break down really quickly within that copyrights versus patents versus trademarks, right? And we're going to spend, a bigger chunk today talking about copyrights. Copyright is a legal term used to describe the rights that creators have over their literary and artistic works, right? So this ranges from books, music, paintings, sculpture, and films to computer programs, databases, advertisements, maps, technical drawings, right? So this includes stuff that you create and publish online. Courses, programs, even membership sites. Patents, on the other hand, refer to an exclusive right granted for an invention. So generally speaking, a patent provides the patent owner with the right to decide how or whether the invention can be used, including by others. In exchange for this right, so patents are very technical. You get these very technical drawings. They explain and describe and illustrate how an invention works, right? So patents are a whole separate world. I don't live in the world of patents. I do a lot of coaching around copyrights and trademarks. So let's move on to trademarks. Trademark is a legal term referencing a sign capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one enterprise from those of other enterprises. So basically distinguishing your business from other businesses. Trademarks date back to ancient times when craftsmen used to literally put their mark, their signature mark on their product. right? So trademark, you can also get a trademark registration for, excuse me, and they can also be called, you know, trade names, etc. But you can get a registered mark for, and for example, think of like Nike, just do it, like a tagline, a short phrase or a series of words, the logo itself of the company name. So there's various ways that you can use trademarks in business to protect your intellectual property. But copyrights, think of copyrights as the protection that applies to essentially bigger bodies of work, right? So if we move on to, for example, to some of the frequently asked questions about copyrights, because today I really wanted to focus on copyrights. Frequently asked questions include like, what can you copyright? What do copyrights apply to? So in the world of online business and the entrepreneurs that I serve, right, you can copyright videos, you can get a copyright registration for a web page, and you might do that on multiple web pages on your website, depending on what you have created, depending on if it's part of a program or course. There's various ways that you can seek copyright protection. You can obtain copyright protection for digital creations like artwork, illustrations, other things that are not just copy or like video content. Let's say you're creating a workbook or a manual or a course, a course outline. All of those can be copyrighted, right? The actual physical item. And, you might have a digital version of that as well. So copyrights protect a wide variety of work. They're relatively easy to obtain and inexpensive. So if you're somebody who creates a lot of content, if you are to the point of selling that content, bundling it, really exposing it to the world, you should be having a copyright strategy in your pocket that you're ready to implement, right? I also get asked regularly, what happens if I don't want to seek a formal copyright registration? Is there other ways that I can either benefit from copyright laws or protect my work? Yes, there are. Obtaining a copyright registration definitely gives you some advantages, right? So it essentially puts people on notice and puts your creation on record at a federal level that you are the author of that particular work, which does a lot of things for you. It allows you to, for example, bring a lawsuit based on that if you needed to pursue your rights against an infringer. So there are some definite advantages, but let's say that you're not to that point of seeking a formal registration. What can you do short of obtaining an actual copyright registration? One is if you publish, and here's a key hint that will be worth the value alone, of your time on this video, is if you are creating your own content online, and even if you're not seeking a formal federal registration, any digital work that you are putting together, so whether it's an image, like maybe you're a photographer, whether it's a web page that's a tutorial, whether it's even a video, right? You need to embed your copyright protection phrase, right? So an actual copyright claim, copyright mark on the digital creation. So whether that's a page of copy, whether that's an actual, illustration or something that is more visual. If you apply your copyright claim, like just the copyright language, to the bottom of that work, and somebody takes it and scrapes the copyright symbol off, right? So removes your claim to copyrights and reproduces it elsewhere, you are entitled to statutory damages of $2,500 per digital creation. So per page, per piece of artwork, per image, right? So I was just speaking with a friend the other day who does exclusively intellectual property protection and enforcement for her clients. And she had an instance where a guy had been kind of trolling one of her clients online and essentially taking all of his images and using them elsewhere on the web, claiming them as his own. And he was doing just that. He was scraping the copyright symbol off of the bottom of each digital image, and either whether it's cropping it or, you know, covering it up somehow, was basically removing or obscuring that copyright claim. And there was something like 35 images that he did this to, right? And so statutory damages, even without a registration on each individual piece, was $2,500 per image, per digital creation. So keep that in mind, that when you create a web page, when you are creating your membership site, when you are creating your digital images that you're sharing online, absolutely apply your copyright mark, your copyright claim with, you know, the name of yourself as an individual or your business, depending on how you own and retain your intellectual property. And post that conspicuously on everything that you create, because if somebody were to take it and duplicate it, even without a federal registration, you have some protection, including monetary damages. So again, that applies to the digital world. It's not, I don't think it's quite the same if you had, for example, you know, an actual workbook or page with your copyright, although it's still really important that you publish your copyright claim on any work that you're putting out there, right? So just keep that in mind. That's a super important tip that a lot of people don't know about. So we've covered so far what can you copyright, right? We've gone over some examples. What copyright does for you. Definitely gives you an advantage if you ever have to pursue anybody for infringing your intellectual property. We didn't go over all of that because we don't have time, but there's a long list of what a federal registration will do for you. Let's now talk about the various strategies for protecting intellectual property generally, right? So one, you can obtain, and we've talked a little bit about this already, you can obtain a federal registration. So that includes filing the paperwork necessarily. I think the filing fee for a copyright is $35 or something very close. Doing that, or a trademark registration, which is going to be a little bit more expensive. You probably are going to want some help with an actual trademark. They're more technical. You probably want to have somebody run a search on your behalf to make sure that the phrase or the logo or the words that you are looking to have trademarked are available. And even with a slight modification, you may have a greater chance of achieving them. So let's say you're creating a course or program and you want to trademark the title. I heavily recommend to people that they get legal advice in advance, like even in the preliminary phase of doing some research, so that if they need to modify their titles at all, they get that help early on to increase the likelihood that they will actually be able to obtain the protection that they seek. So, because sometimes if something's already registered in a similar category or class with a similar name, you may not be able to qualify for trademark protection of that particular thing. So that can be kind of devastating to some people in business when they learn that, especially if it's a signature program or product. So strategy number one is obtaining a formal registration, right? Whether that's copyright, whether that's trademark. Two, and this is a big part of what I do in my business, and Katrina, I see your question. A trademark protects us nationally. Yes. So that's correct. If you want to protect your business name and there is not already a business that is registered under that particular name or something similar in your line of work. So trademarks work on a kind of a classification system. You have different categories that you can obtain trademarks in. And so long as there's not one that's pre-existing and already registered with the same or similar name, the likelihood is pretty good that you could get your business name registered as a formal trademark. And understand that in the trademark system, because we have actually two registries, we have the principal registry and we also have a supplemental registry. The principal registry is the one to be on if you want exclusive use over a phrase. The secondary registry is kind of a fallback. It's probably truthfully a way for our government to still go about collecting additional fees for people that want some kind of a formal registration. Even though by virtue of being on the supplemental registry, you don't automatically get exclusive rights to your particular phrase or word. It still offers some protection though, and it's still worth pursuing, because once you've been on, for example, the supplemental registry for a period of 5 years and haven't been booted off or had to defend, for example, there's a process that other businesses can go through if they think that you're infringing on their rights. So understand that in addition to the federal registry, there's also common law trademark rights, which means, for example, let's say that your business has a certain name based in Washington. There might be a business with that name based in Florida. And and maybe you're in similar spaces. Let's say that you create online products, you are selling something, well, I'll just say in the health space, health and nutrition, right? And maybe they are as well. And so if you expand your business and you start doing sales of a particular, health or nutrition item in Florida where they have been based, they may actually have claims ahead of yours for common law trademark rights, meaning that they were the first to use that name in Florida in relation to selling that particular thing, right? So understand that the Federal Register, although it is very powerful, it doesn't essentially eliminate all other existing rights. So that's an important thing to know. That said, if you make it onto the Federal Registry, that's a great place to be. Somebody has to kind of put up a fight to get you off of that or to cause you to lose the rights that you've obtained by being on that, but there is a process that businesses can go through. So what I was starting to say is if you're on the supplemental registry for 5 years without having essentially been kicked off or having somebody else brought a claim that their business used that particular phrase ahead of you, then you are very likely then to have some of the rights that they get and actually be able to refile on the principal registry at that point. But you have to wait 5 years after being on the supplemental registry. So that's kind of digging into some of the technical details, but it's interesting. There are other attorneys and legal coaches out there that make it sound so easy and like, once you're on, you're guaranteed and you have these rights for 10 years. I mean, the things that people say that are misleading, even coming out of the mouths of an attorney, are not that helpful. And so I want people to understand that it is a bit more complex than what some people might represent online. Once you have a registration, you do have to police the marketplace. Just because you have a registration doesn't mean that you're free and clear. Right? Okay, I'm glad that helped. But it's a bit of work, and there are services that you can hire that will help you police the marketplace once you have a registration, but it is definitely protection that has real value that can help you in your business, especially if you are selling online products, programs, you've created a signature course, etc. You want to have the rights to claim that as your own. Do I see my sister on here? I think that's Ashley Matthews. Hi, Ash. So we have just been talking about how to protect our online businesses. And I started off the video, which if you go back and watch the beginning, we talked some about how willingly, and Mary Frances, I see you're on there too. I'm still trying to get to know this Facebook Live model. So we talked at the beginning of this video about how willing people are. Thank you for the hearts, Mary Frances, yay. If it has been helpful for anybody else on here, great. Feel free to share. I would love for people who are confronting these issues in their business, copyrights, online protections, having their content stolen, right? They need to understand what strategies are available to them to protect this stuff, because as I was saying at the beginning of the video, there are people everywhere who will willingly take your content. I have, consistently people getting in touch only because they are now at the point of facing somebody having stolen their content, including something that somebody paid for in an online course or program. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking Well, if somebody buys my program, if somebody goes to the effort of purchasing this, etc., they must respect my business. They would never treat me that way. Wrong. It happens every day that people inside your course or program will willingly take your content, repurpose it, violate, any, I'll just call it, seemingly obvious ethical rules, right? And it's why you need some of these protections in place. And we were just getting to the 3 strategies for protecting your online content, right? I'd covered the first one, obtaining an official federal registration. And these, by the way, depending on what you obtain, folks, because I know we've got some international people on here, apply internationally. So for example, if you obtain copyright registrations in the United States or in Canada, there is something called the Berne Convention that I think has something like 164 countries or something that have signed on, that basically says if you have copyright protection in your own country, we will honor that in our country as well, right? So people in the United States can have powerful copyright protections in Canada as well, and vice versa. And it's why, for example, even this month when, I've had to pursue, I think I said something like 20 people around the world that have taken my online content, duplicated it, put it on their websites. I've been able to get full payment for what I charge from many of those people once they realize that when they've been caught. I use a professional service that tracks this stuff, and I'm actually going to give that out as a tip at the end of this video as well. If you're concerned about your online content and you want to track who's using it around the world, there's ways you can learn that without having to run all the searches yourself. And so I've had people in the UK, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, all around the United States, a handful in Canada, right, steal my content and use it. I've had 3 or 4 people even within my social groups in the last, few weeks that I've had to pursue for similar reasons. It's really unfortunate, but people do this. And so that's part of this discussion of why it's absolutely essential that running, I know, right? Big wow. It's absolutely essential that you have these protections in place and that you understand what's available to you. So getting back on the 3 strategies that you can use to protect your content, right? Obtaining federal registrations. That's a powerful way. Copyright registrations, trademark registrations. 2 is putting contractual terms in place. So a lot of people don't think about this because they think, well, it's either a federal registration or nothing. No, a huge part of what I do in my business is build terms for people that protect their online content. So this includes your website terms and conditions and privacy policy, which those 2 documents need to live conspicuously, which means clearly posted on every page of your website, right? So the website terms and conditions, think of those as the ground rules, telling people what they can do with your content, how they can use it, whether or not they can share it, what they can, and actually it includes essentially a certain amount of licensing language, what they can do with it personally versus in their business. So some of us provide information that's valuable for businesses, right? Some of us provide information that people are only going to use in their personal lives, depending on what we do. So you have specific language that defines how people can use your information, which is really important. And then you have limiters around your liability. You have disclaimers, because we can't, despite our best efforts, we cannot guarantee that people are going to use the information in the way that we want them to, right? So this is where, as a business owner, we have to protect ourselves against the wrongful use of the information that we put out in the world. So website terms and conditions and privacy policy, 2 documents, they do 2 different things. Your privacy policy fulfills your obligation as a business owner to let people know what you're doing with their content. So both your website visitors and your clients, what you're doing with their content when they come to your website, how you're using it, whether you share it, how you're protecting it, and then how, for example, if they wanted to get out of your database, how they can do that. So your privacy policy is essential. It's required by law unless you're excluding people from California from visiting your website. So just understand that those are two key documents. And then the other way that you protect your online intellectual property is through your terms of purchase for anything that you sell. So the first two documents we talked about cover your general online presence. The terms of purchase covers anything that you're selling online, your digital products or programs, your courses, maybe you have video tutorials. Your terms of purchase are going to cover, from a contractual perspective, what your refund policy is. Again, there's going to be limiting language around your liability so that people can understand what you will and won't be liable for, how they can rely on the information or not. It's going to have appropriate disclaimers. So back to the health coach example. If you are giving out like nutrition or health advice, right? Really important that you have proper disclaimers that says it's not medical advice, you're not a doctor, this is not personalized medical treatment, right? All of this stuff that is going to help you stay safe in your business. So that's the second strategy for protecting your intellectual property, is putting contractual agreements in place that prevent people from using your information in ways that you don't want. And then finally, and there's other ways too, but we're just going to go over some of the key ones that you could be thinking about. Finally is actually, if you are in a business where you're creating enough, and it should be your goal to be in this place, right? You're creating enough online content, enough intellectual property that is a huge component of what you're selling in your business, then you should consider, even ahead of that point, establishing probably an intellectual property holding company. And I think this can be done in Canada as well, but in the United States, this would look like, for example, an LLC that is a holding company which exclusively owns the rights to your IP. So your intellectual property has been, thank you, Mary Frances. I know it's a lot, right? But people don't generally get this information, and researching it online isn't fun. And I mean, there's just a ton of ways that people avoid hearing this. But people who are in business, who are running an online business, who are creating awesome, powerful content, they need this stuff. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And if you have friends, including friends in the States, please feel free to share this video. It would mean a lot to me. Hi, Phil. I see another one of my Canadian friends joining in. I hope you'll go back, because we're getting close to the end. I hope you'll go back and rewatch some of this content. We've talked a lot about online legal protections, copyrights, the willingness of people to steal your content. So I know you probably, being a coach yourself, you probably have a certain amount of online content. We talked a lot in the beginning of this video about examples of people being really quite willing to take whatever it is that you put online and repurpose it for themselves. I've seen people take other people's content, including pictures of the person, and use them on their own website. It's really crazy. Good to see you, Phil. But we were just covering the 3 strategies for protecting your online content, right? So we talked about obtaining federal registrations, and a lot of these strategies are applicable in Canada as well. Contractual agreements, okay? So if you don't obtain federal registrations, and even if you do, you should still have contractual agreements in place that protect your content. And then third is entity formation, which we were just covering, which is actually setting up an IP holding company, which I believe you can do in Canada as well. In the United States, it would be, for example, an LLC. Maybe it's an S Corp or a C Corp, depending on the rest of your entity structuring. But essentially, it's a separate business structure whose sole purpose is to own and protect the IP that you're creating and using in your operating company. So for example, I have an operating company set up for my legal coaching business, but I have an IP holding company that separately holds all of my IP through assignments, and you have to put the proper documents in place. But it means that that company is responsible for holding the intellectual property. And then you essentially would have an agreement between your two companies that allows your operating company to use the IP, right? And if, for example, your operating company ever got sued, faced bankruptcy, faced any, big problems, the holding company would have the right to sever that agreement, right? As a way to protect the IP and make sure that it is not an asset that gets handed over to a judgment creditor, in the event that you had a judgment against your business. So I know we've covered a lot. I'm probably gonna wrap this up unless there are any specific questions from people still that are on the video. And thank you guys for joining me for my first office hours. I had to run it as a test, and I've been looking forward to this and as a way to share my message and connect with people and give people a few tips about what they can do in their own business to keep themselves safe, to have tremendous success. By way of background, I've worked with people who are just starting their own business for the very first time to people that are running multi-million-dollar businesses. So these are strategies that will allow you to grow. And I want people to be able to protect themselves along that whole path so that they can look back, be one of the successful business owners still standing, right? Because a lot of people don't make it. The statistics here in the States are not good. Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. I personally am committed to changing that statistic. So share this if you have any friends that you think could benefit from learning how to protect their online content. I would really love your shares and support. And thank you just for being on here today. That was tremendously supportive. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. And I will be back next week with the next round of office hours. Okay, thanks so much. And thanks to anybody who is watching the replay as well. Thank you. Bye, guys.